Greetings, friends. My name is John Gabriel, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the topic of Platonism and how it is viewed by the mainstream. So, let's begin. Now, this is from one of the Stanford pages, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and it's written by one Mark Balaguer. I don't know if that pronunciation is correct, but let's see here. This is his name, Balaguer, however you pronounce it. Okay, so before I come back to this document, the title here is also a redundant title because Platonism is metaphysics. So to say Platonism in metaphysics, well, it's actually even worse than redundant. It's silly because Platonism is about metaphysics. Okay, so this article is revised by Balaguer, whatever, and this is the second revision, also called the substantive revision. You know, one thing I've noticed about mainstream academics is that they tend to spend a lot of time on ideas and concepts that are not even relevant to the topic that they're trying to address. So, first of all, what is Platonism? And Balaguer says that Platonism is the view that there exist such things as abstract objects, where an abstract object is an object that does not exist in space or time, and which is therefore entirely non-physical and non-mental. Okay, so there are many things wrong with that definition. First of all, neither space nor time are relevant where abstract objects are concerned. Okay, in fact, time is meaningless without matter, physical or otherwise, and almost constant, repeatable motion. So in this link here, I, for the first time in human history, give a coherent, cogent definition of the concept of time. And you'll be shocked because it's nothing like the many garbage videos you'll find by supposedly very educated PhDs in philosophy and physics, etc. on the web. Okay, so they have no clue what is time, and most physicists and theoretical physicists also do not understand the concept of time at all. Okay, so, and by the way, Einstein had no clue what is time. Now, Platonism is the view, this is the correct definition. Platonism is the view that there exist such things as abstract objects, where an abstract object is entirely non-physical, inanimate, and independent of the mind of any sentient being. Okay, so abstract objects, being inanimate, have always existed and continue to exist, whether any sentient being ever thinks about the same or not. And the abstract objects which are well formed are called perfect concepts or noumena, and they can only be said to exist, okay, if they are well formed, and that's the fact. The idea of existence of any abstract object is inextricably tied to its well-formedness, right? And in this link, I explain what it means to be well-defined. So now in Balaguer's first example, consider the sentence 3 is prime, is a very bad choice because already numbers are abstract objects, and primeness is just a property of certain kinds of numbers, right? So, I mean, it's not only irrelevant, it's circular, it assumes that you know a lot of mathematics already. I mean, how could you know what is a prime unless you've already moved past the idea of the abstract concept of number? So the elements of Euclid are about perfect concepts or noumena that are indeed very well formed abstract objects, meaning they have always existed, unlike, say, a unicorn. What is noticeably absent from Balaguer's entire article is at the very least a proof what is a proof that an abstract object can actually exist. He gives no proofs. And my previous article link explains, again, what it means to be well defined. So a better example would have been the concept of pi. For example, circumference length compared to diameter length. Because if any other sentient being were to compare a circle's circumference with its diameter, then the realization of pi would be identical, okay? Because an abstract object is not representable geometrically except as a visual form. But for example, if you try to draw a circle, that's not a circle. This little O here is not a circle. It's just a visualization of a circle. And it doesn't actually capture the meaning of what it means to be a circle, because a circle is about a special kind of distance or a path, okay? And it's not just a path from where all the points are equidistant from a given center. That doesn't define a circle, okay? That's insufficient. Right, so let's continue. Another of his examples that is equally poor and irrelevant is this one here. Consider, for instance, the property of being red. And, well, look, the property of color does not apply to an abstract object because color requires physical matter and light, which is physical. And it also requires perception, which means that you've got an extra layer on top of this, the observer, so to speak, which can be a human or anything else that can see. So abstract objects do not take on the same or similar properties of physical objects, whereas the reverse is true, and it's known as mimicry or reification of the abstract properties. So for example, if I draw a circle like this where I've highlighted, I'm mimicking the idea of the perfect concept, okay? Which, if you're really interested in how a circle is defined, you can download my free article called "There Are No Axioms or Postulates in Mathematics" to see how these things are all derivable from nothing, using only your brain, of course. So there's no way to reify color because abstract objects cannot be seen. So totally irrelevant. And of course, Balaguer continues his misguided line of thought by mentioning the attribute red at least 23 times. He then discusses a few variations of Platonism as interpreted by the ignorant mainstream before finally settling in on a supposed valid argument against Platonism, one called the epistemological, actually that should be epistemological argument, okay? And it consists of 6 claims, really absurd claims, each a consequence of the previous, beginning with this first claim here. It says, humans exist entirely within space-time. Okay, so that's not even wrong. Why? Because space-time is a misguided human or Einsteinian concept. To say that humans exist in their own thought processes is most laughable because it is circular and without any logic whatsoever. It would be more accurate to say simply that humans exist in a physical universe, okay? Because that we can say is a reasonable claim. Now, if there exist any abstract mathematical objects, now suddenly we go from abstract objects to abstract mathematical objects. So now there is an introduction not only of abstract objects, but also mathematical. Then they do not exist in space-time. Excuse me? That's such a laughable statement to make. This second claim is just more misguided and ignorant, mainstream, if-then occupation, okay? They basically live with an if-then occupation, which is really absurd because the predicate is the assumption that if something exists, the abstract object in this case, or even more more absurd is that they added abstract mathematical object, then it cannot exist in an imaginary concept called space-time. And since when is a conclusion, the then part, valid based on a predicate that is assumed to be true? It's outrageous. I could have stopped at the first claim because it is nonsense, but the absurdity simply grows, even if one were to allow the first claim to go unchallenged. And the syphilitic thought paradigms do not end there with the addition of a therefore that leads into yet another significant conclusion. that states abstract mathematical objects are beyond the ability of humans to realize. Well, people, you can't make up this kind of crap. This guy is a philosophy lecturer at Stanford University. So if there exist any abstract mathematical objects, now we already are talking about mathematical when we passed that point a long time ago, and we haven't even described what it means to be a mathematical object. Then human beings could not attain knowledge of them. Wow. So, well, if humans cannot attain the knowledge of abstract objects, then mathematical abstract objects do not exist. And the following conclusion is simply based once again, on a false premise. But it does not end there. The mental masturbation continues unabated to arrive at the ultimate conclusion that mathematical Platonism is not correct. Excuse me? Why would it not be correct? The entire wanker argument does not address right or wrong, only existence of the initial, only existence as in the initial premise, i.e., whether an abstract object exists or not. And the final three claims are simply too far in la-la land to even be considered worthy of discussion. Claim 4 says if mathematical Platonism is correct, then human beings could not attain mathematical knowledge. I mean, yes, again, I say, you can't make this sort of crap up, people. You can't. It really is 100% garbage. Now, I'm going to give you the most important fact about Platonism, and then I'm going to end. Platonism is the only worthwhile philosophy, and it is how the ancient Greeks realized all of their sound mathematics. In fact, without philosophy, there would be no realization of any other knowledge or science. This would be a very different world still today. You wouldn't have engineering, you wouldn't have architecture, you wouldn't have technology, you'd have nothing, because all of that comes from philosophy. Philosophy is the king of all knowledge, and because we've had all these idiots in the mainstream, including this guy who revised the article, we've had problems with students being able to think properly. You cannot think properly without understanding the important concepts of Platonic philosophy. All else is garbage. Everything else that comes after Plato is a poor plagiarism and an attempt to reject the knowledge of the ancient Greeks, to try to prove that it was wrong. I mean, even this epistemological argument is total bullshit. It's not even an argument. To call it an argument, well, I guess it's very telling. So I'm running out of time, and I'm also running out of breath. My name is John Gabriel, and if you haven't already subscribed to my new calculus channel, become a subscriber, spread the news, click like, and I hope that I'll be chatting to you again soon about some interesting mathematical topic, and also about pedagogy, because pedagogy is one of my let's call it loves, because it's one of my favorite subjects, how to teach mathematics the correct way. So that's pretty much it. Once again, John Gabriel, this is a new calculus channel. Till next time, goodbye, folks.